What's up guys, and welcome back to another eBay miniature rescue. Today we're going to be working on Chris H's Grey Seer THANQUOL. This is a really cool old sculpt. It's all pewter, and obviously it was covered in some old paint. So I stripped the miniature and I primed everything using VALLEJO surface primer and did a zenithal over the top of it. Now we're going to start with dark green as a base coat. And because we did the zenithal, we're going to try and keep it pretty thin and preserve a lot of that top-down lighting. We're going to come right in with Dead Flesh, which is a pretty bright green color. And I'm going to do this the same way that I did the zenithal highlight in the beginning, because the cloak on this guy is really cool and dynamic. And by shooting it from the top down like this, we're going to pick up a lot of that detail, and it's going to leave those nice dark green shadows. We're going to start laying down some of our silver using VALLEJO Metal Color Burnt Iron. With RHINOX hide, I'm going to take care of the ropes and leather pouches. Using MOURNFANG brown, I'm going to take care of all of the hair and where that hair meets on the skin. So I'm going to roughly block this in, and then we're going to come back later with a skin tone and kind of blend that all together. VALLEJO's metal color, copper, is going to be used for anything that isn't silver but is still metallic on this model. Now normally I would have used Screaming Bell, which is probably GW's best metallic. But this is copper, that's copper, and I wanted to see how well this worked in comparison. This paint goes down a million times easier. I'm just not so sure if the color is as rich as Screaming Bell, but I'm going to do some more tests, at some point. CORAX white as a base coat for the horns and nails. CADIAN FLESHTONE is going to be the base coat for a majority of our bare skin. So what I'm going to do is, regularly base coat over anywhere that's just skin. And in any of the places where that MOURNFANG brown meets, I'm just going to kind of water it down a little bit and kind of just layer it lightly over the top of that transition. When we come back in with a wash, that should cover up a majority of any kind of harsh transitions that there are. And once we do some layering with some brighter colors and reinforce those tones, then it's all going to make a little more sense later on. I'm going to use Agrax Earthshade to do an all-over wash for the entire model. This works really well for Skaven in particular because they're generally dirty, and Agrax Earthshade is a nice, medium brown wash. Even on their skin, it looks pretty good. I've done this on a few other Skaven models, kind of avoiding that reddish skin tone, and it's usually turned out pretty decent. Using a brown wash like this is also going to go a long way in hiding those harsh transitions between the MOURNFANG brown and the CADIAN FLESHTONE. After that wash has dried, we're going to come back in with CADIAN FLESHTONE and just lightly layer over any of the uppermost parts of those flesh tones. Skeleton Horde contrast paint for the horns and the nails. Now with NURGLING green, we're going to start to try and layer this cloak and really bring out those highlights. So we did that zenithal highlight, with that top-down brighter green color. And now what we're going to do is water this down and start to do broad highlights across most of those upper areas. And it's going to give us a little bit brighter green. It's going to mix with our highlights that we have going on. And then we're going to kind of edge highlight everything else. And that's really going to define this cloak. Using Kislev flesh, much like we just did with the NURGLING green, we're going to go over any of the skin areas, and in a little bit tighter pattern than that CADIAN flesh tone, we're just going to try and highlight those areas. So you want just a little bit of CADIAN flesh tone still showing where that transition between the fur and the skin meets. The wash is taking care of a lot of that for us, but it's becoming a lot brighter as we hit that zenithal. Using VALLEJO Metal Colors Aluminum, which is really bright, I'm going to edge highlight all of the metallics. MOURNFANG Brown is going to be the main highlight color for any of the rope or leather pouches. A dry brush of Gorthor Brown over all of the fur, and then just a little bit on some of the leather, to kind of just punch it up from that MOURNFANG Brown, is really going to bring out a lot of detail in each of those areas. Ushabti bone to highlight anything that was white, like bone or teeth or the little scroll he's holding. I'm also going to use this to highlight kind of the sharpest edges or any of the highest points on his cloak. And there's just a little bit of yellow in Ushabti bone, so this kind of pushes that green value a little bit more, and it just gives a lot more brightness to those areas. Thank you, Chris H, for sending in this Grey Seer. It was awesome to paint, and I really like this old pewter sculpt. Now, Chris sent me that Doom Bull Minotaur that I painted probably a month ago or so, and he also sent me the Bone Ripper that goes along with this model, so I will be working on that at some point. So thank you very much, Chris. I hope you enjoy this model. So this was a pretty fun, straightforward, old-fashioned rescue. And it's really nice to get to paint something that, has this kind of awesome dynamic look to it. Even though these were meant for square bases, and you can kind of see that in his singular pose, there's still a lot going on in this model that, makes him perfectly good for even playing on the table today. And I mean, Grey Seer is still around, in a different iteration, obviously. But if you roll up to a table with this old pewter sculpt, people are definitely going to look twice. So don't overlook older sculpts on eBay. More often than not, they are less expensive, and honestly, they are way easier to strip down to bare pewter. You throw any pewter model in a bath of isopropyl alcohol, 97% and above, and you will have a sparkling clean pewter model in seriously like 10 minutes. Thank you very much for joining me on another eBay miniature rescue. If you enjoyed something about this video, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. If you want to support this channel, much like Chris H has, consider donating an old, disgusting, forgotten model, and I will do what I can to save it. Otherwise, just below this video is the brand new merch shelf, which has t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. No matter what, I appreciate you coming by and checking out this video, so thank you. Once again, I've been Casey, and I will see you in the next video.